Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Scott McLean, who's the president and CEO of Transition Metals Corp, who are a multi-commodity project generator focused on the discovery of ore deposits in Canada. Scott has over 30 years experience in exploration and management, resulting in the discovery of various mineral deposits, including the 17 million tonne nickel rim south deposit in Sudbury, which is one of the highlights that Scott's achieved. And he's also named Prospector of the Year back in 2004 at PDAC. He founded Transition Metals back in 2009, and he's here today to tell us a little bit more about the company, what he's been up to, and also what the Canadian junior and exploration market is like at the moment. So that's welcome Scott to the podcast. How you doing, Scott?
Oh, very good. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, appreciate your time as well. I know you're an avid listener, listen to these episodes. So I wondered if you can give the audience, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, about your background. Obviously, those in Canada and maybe a little bit further afield will know you. But for those that don't know you, just wondered if you can give us a little bit of a background about yourself.
Sure. So I guess I've been in the exploration end of the mining industry for many years, graduating back in 1985 and getting my first job with Kidd Creek Mines Limited, which was quickly taken out by Falconbridge and then Extrata Nickel, and today Glencore is sort of the where we are with that those acquisitions. So I stayed with Falconbridge and Extrata Nickel for about 23 years, kind of rising up through the corporate ranks into management roles. And the final role I had in that company was managing the exploration efforts on surface and underground in Sudbury. And in your intro, you alluded to one of the discoveries we made. The team discovered a number of other zone extensions as well as new discoveries during that tenure I had in Sudbury. Certainly, Nickel Rim South was the feather in our cap at that time. That ore body is almost mined out, believe it or not, and we did receive an award from the PDAC in 2004. In 2023, I made a choice to leave Extrata Nickel after having some success there, and try my hand in the junior world. I teamed up with an individual by the name of David Elliott, who is a good friend of mine. He's one of the founders of Haywood Securities, and together we started building some companies. Transition really came about in as a private company in 2009, and we took it public in 2011 with my co-founder, who's still with us today, Greg Collins. And we again continued that. Greg also came out of the Falconbridge fold, and we worked together for many years. And we continued that fold of focusing on exploration and developing new opportunities. And probably one of the more significant discoveries made was Sunday Lake, which is a large PGM deposit near Thunder Bay that we discovered with our partners Impala Platinum out of South Africa. And you mentioned we did receive the PDAC award in 2004 for Nickel Rim South, and together we received the Ontario Discoverers of the Year in 2014 for Sunday Lake. And so 2024 is kind of shaping up to be a good year for us if you extrapolate those 10-year awards that we've had. And 2023 it'd be our year of discovery, and hopefully another award next year. But that's just a marketing pitch for today. So anyway, we've continued to build Transition out as a significant company in the junior space. A number of projects across Canada, Spinout Companies as well, dividends back to shareholders, and we can expand on those things going forward. Myself, the company is based in Sudbury. I've recently moved to Toronto to be closer to Bay Street and the financing networks down here, and enjoy my time here in Cabbagetown. People know Toronto, and enjoy the Toronto Islands and all that Toronto has to offer over the last couple of years.
Obviously, Transition Metals seems to have obviously a lot of assets and a very tight capital structure. I just wonder if you can just tell us a little bit more about that and about obviously the company and obviously some of the projects as well.
Sure. Now, we've accumulated a number of assets, and those assets are put in bundles. We have a certain amount of cash that we always carry. We're always in that $1.5 million to $2 million range. We don't need much more than that typically on hand. We have a number of projects, 20 projects across Canada. We focus on a couple of those that to really kind of keep control of a narrative and have a good news flow to come out. Certainly pick the best ones to work on. Through the number of deals that we've had quite a cash portfolio of marketable securities, probably in the range of about $4 million worth of securities that we can rely on from time to time to bring income into or bring revenue into the company, as well a bundle of royalties, a number of milestone payments that if things really work out on some of these projects that we could really take advantage of as well. So altogether, we kind of firm up that asset value in a rather conservative internal method, which I'm happy to review in detail with people, but at about $20 to $25 million worth of assets, and really don't see that on the market. But the company does focus on two key projects right now. One is called Pike Warden in the Yukon, and that's seen some recent interest in the market. And the other one is a magmatic sulfide or nickel copper project that we have in Ontario that is called Maude Lake. And those are where we're putting our own internal exploration dollars currently.
Okay. Obviously, you as you mentioned, you've got quite a few properties, so obviously you're pretty busy. How do you focus your exploration activities across obviously your portfolio?
Sure. I mean, having a portfolio that is a nice thing to have. You have a pipeline of projects that you can rely on, but we also look to vend those out or option those out to other parties that can advance them for us. By doing so, they have the right to turn into those projects and typically earn a majority to even 100% interest in those projects, where the company Transition would retain a minority interest, or for example, at Sunday Lake, we have a 25% free carried interest, and Pala and Pala Canada hold the balance of that 75%. Or we hold a royalty on them and allow the company to earn 100%. So that's one way we can manage those projects. Most of the projects have enough assessment work done on them that they're not onerous to maintain. So our main focus comes back to what do we think are the best projects that we have out there, and so we've selected a couple of those and that really have some strong merit, and we advance those by ourselves. So your question is around how do we focus? Well, we focus our internal exploration dollars on what we think are the best projects in hand. We usually carry two at a time. If those don't pan out, we have other projects we can rely on, but we also look for other partners to come in and advance it.
How, obviously, with all the projects that you've got and all the projects that you have worked on, have you got a set criteria as to what you consider a good project and then obviously take on? Do you have a set sort of criteria that you follow?
We do. I mean, basically, we're looking at earlier stage projects in this company. Sometimes they start as early as a concept and we take them forward, but currently they have to order to meet some of the criteria that we impose. They have to have obviously significant geoscientific components to it. There's good sampling there. There's good geophysical targets. And so on. But also one of the key things that's kind of risen in the industry in recent times is what it will be our social license, ability to get social license to explore these projects. And that's becoming more and more a critical checkbox on these projects as we select them. Are we going to be able to work with the local communities? Are there parks or other stakeholders in the area that are going to kind of impact our ability not only to explore, but to take these forward into a exploitation program. So so they got to have the right geoscientific metrics. We really just have focused only on base metals and precious metals. And when we talk about base metals, most of our success has been in the magmatic sulfides. So those being nickel, copper, and PGMs. We're very strong on the copper components. In fact, we have a couple of pretty interesting sedimentary hosted copper projects, and then have some good experience in the gold sector. And that's sort of the three areas that we really focus our attention.
You just recently completed financing. What are your exploration plans for this year with that financing?
Yeah, so with that financing, that was a difficult financing in this market, but we were able to put together and actually meet our target in terms of financing. And those were a lot of that money, not all of it, but a fair bit of it was raised as what we call critical flow through financing, which is a program, tax beneficial program in Canada. So we have to focus on critical metals, and those two projects that I mentioned earlier, Maude Lake and Pike Warden, are the key projects that money will go towards this year and floating into next year. Our main target at Maude Lake is a nickel copper PGM target. We've done some drilling there last year, identified some significant off-hole anomalies, completed some surface geophysics this year, and we'd like to get those targets drilled off this year. At Pike Warden, we've employed some remote sensing. We've just come back from the field where we've completed a prospecting mapping program. That's a huge project with we started this year. We had 18 high-grade showings in a big epithermal project, where now we've come up with, we think, 3 or 4 more. And so as the news comes out in September, when we get our analyses back, we're going to have some more targets to chase. So the key projects for that financing that we've done are Maude Lake and Pike Warden. We do have opportunities to spend money elsewhere, and we're currently looking at one of our other PGM projects called Saturday Night as well.
There was an interesting article in a National Post about your Pike Warden property and the Next Gen Challenge that you sponsored. Just wondering if you can just tell us a little bit more about that.
That's a really cool program. A young man approached us, Jamal Amin, who was interested in developing what he called the Next Gen Challenge, which was looking at inviting teams of students from the universities across Canada to attend the PDAC and present to a panel of industry CEOs their project ideas. And some of those projects that we had delivered to us were concepts without any property staked, and the other ones, people had gone out and staked and done work on the property. And Transition was one of the founding sponsors of that program. So the winner of that challenge would get funding from the different sponsors to go out and advance those projects on their own. In each case, we sponsored it for 3 years. In each case, we ended up doing deals with option deals with the winners. And in this case, a young man by the name of Ryan Berkey really impressed us with the Pike Warden project. It's somewhat of a remote project. It requires a lot of legwork. It's in the mountains, and he'd gone out there and really put together a nice package of showings and a good model that really impressed us. And we were able to kind of do a deal with them that allowed us to earn up to 100%. And it's been beneficial for Ryan as well. We've advanced his project. He's got some money in hand, some cash in hand, some shares in the company. And looking at the program, I really like it. It's you're accessing some of the newest most creative minds that are coming out of the universities that have spent their previous 4 to 6 years really focused on geology. And I like to say they think they're pretty smart coming out of university, and some of them are, and they create some very, very creative new ideas, and able to tap something that's been beneficial for us in a few different times. And certainly Ryan's work has been really a real catalyst in getting us up into the Yukon, which was one of the jurisdictions that we hadn't worked in until we had met Ryan.
Now that sounds like a really good sort of incentive, and especially for recent graduates. to go out and obviously show what they can achieve. Is this challenge going to be ongoing every year?
That is my hope. So through the COVID lockdown, it did slow down, but I'm encouraged this year that we'll be able to kind of get it up and running again. So keep your ear to the rail, and hopefully there'll be some news out in the fall that we're entertaining the new next gen challenge again.
Yeah, well, I do get quite a few graduates listening to this, so they can obviously maybe look into it and obviously participate.
Sure.
So that's good to hear. Can you just tell us about some of your spin-out companies?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we've done in the past. We've taken assets and we've put them out into new vehicles that we create, and we take back 100% of the equity in a tax neutral way in those companies, and then we dilute the equity in the subsidiary until it's off and running on its own. And it's a very good model, and we've done that twice so far. The first one we did is called SPC Nickel, which is on the TSXV. It's probably one of the prominent nickel plays out there that people should be looking at. We're currently drilling off an open pitable resource in the Sudbury mining camp, right just down the street from the mill. We hope that's going to be a very significant deposit, and we're looking to deliver a National Instrument 43101 resource later this year on that project. That company also controls 100% of the muskox intrusion in Nunavut. And if anybody knows about that, it's probably the last mineralized large igneous province in the world. So this intrusion that we control 100% of is over 125 kilometers long. It's mineralized throughout it, and we're the sole owners of most of it and have an option to control 100% of another part of it. So it's a real going concern if you're in the nickel space, and people should be looking at SPC Nickel. It's SPC on the Venture Exchange here in Toronto. The other company that we spun out is really focused on gold. The name of that company is Canadian Gold Miner, and it has a number of gold projects in the Abitibi, which is one of the world's most prolific gold camps in the world. It takes up the entire Lincoln-Nipissing structure just south of the Cadillac Break in Kirkland Lake. Brand new opportunity, large scale, and that company we hope to get public in the coming months ahead of us. We're thinking about a third one right now. We'd like to be able to spin out some of our PGM assets, and that's a little bit more work. It's something we'll be working on this fall. But we like the spin-out model. It brings back a lot of equity into the company. It allows those projects to advance with new management and new directors and new sources of financing. So it's a really good model if you can make it work, and we hope to do that again this fall.
Yeah, I just want to give your view of the junior and exploration market within Canada, and also what challenges do you see that sector facing for obviously the remainder of this year and into next year?
Well, I think many of your listeners have recognized the number of exploration dollars going in the ground over the last decade have been limited, and commodity demand continues to rise, especially as we go through big shifts in the economies, particularly things like the electrification of society and the demands on specific critical metals in order to facilitate that. So we're seeing like a significant increase in demand for certain metals going forward. And that's reflected in the metal prices we're getting, the commodity market that we have today. We've seen significant increases in a number of commodities like copper, like nickel, uranium starting to move. All these commodities have moved up significantly over the last few years, although we've seen them flatten a little bit over the last few months. There's certainly a good, strong commodity market there. Gold, is going to hit 2,000 again, and I think it's just a very strong commodity market. The problem that the juniors have right now is the financing market, and I think anybody in the junior business is always looking for that time period where we get synchronicity between the financing markets, the capital markets, and the commodity markets. And those have been just a little bit out of sync right now, making it very difficult for the junior miner to get out there and raise money. Now, I mentioned that I raised a bit of money this spring. I helped both with SBC nickel, but primarily with Transition Metals. And in both those cases, those financings were probably some of the more difficult financings that we've had to do in the companies, since the dawn of time almost. And it's not because we don't have strong projects and strong people. It's basically because there's a lackluster interest in what we're in the junior markets, but also junior investors are often using their discretionary funds to invest. And when we see instability in the economies, such as wars in Russia and economic concerns in the U.S., etc., that really affects our ability to raise money. So your question was really about what are some of the challenges the juniors are seeing. I think it's always financing, but right now financing is prominent, and getting your treasury built up without having to really blow out your equity is probably the biggest challenges CEOs have today, in my mind.
Do you think that we're at that tipping point where financing will start to become more accessible because of the need for all of these minerals? Because we're way behind the eight ball in all of these commodities that we need out of the ground, commodities, minerals out of the ground. And I suppose it's the case of just waiting for markets to slightly change, and then there's going to be a big bull run. Do you see that happening sort of sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I do. I'm actually kind of hedging that this fall we'll see some strengthening of those markets, some more interest in the sector, and particularly in the markets themselves, where we'll see more liquidity of these stocks, more volume on these stocks going forward, and that will just propagate into an easier environment for financing. So yeah, over the next 6 months, I can't help but think that things will improve. There may be some unseen forces that may bear upon us as we move through that period, but honestly, it does have to change. I think that the demand of these commodities is in place to be able to really create a strong market for commodities, and investors and institutions are going to have to come on side, as well as large companies that really haven't. The majors that really haven't put a lot of money into exploration are now seeing, well, we've only got so many years ahead of us. We better start thinking about this. And all these things together will create that market. I'm predicting that things will change as we come into September. We'll start to feel a little better about the markets, and that should push through towards the PDAC. But let's wait and see. And but it's imminent, and in geologic terms, imminent can be anywhere from the next second to the next 1,000 years. But let's hope it's in the next month or two.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah. And lastly, what's the outlook for Transition Metals over the sort of next 6 to 12 months?
Well, in terms of catalysts, I mean, the big catalysts we're going to have are really kind of focusing on these 2 exploration projects, maybe bringing a third one in, which is called Saturday Night. We'd like to do a little bit more work on that. And that should create a bit of a news flow. By focusing on our key projects, we are able to kind of mainstream our news flow and not be, pitching different projects. So we'll just focus on those projects and try and bring good results to the market, which will hopefully increase the value of the stock. That's the concept here. Will allow us to raise money again if we can get stock price up, and provide some liquidity and some opportunity back to the shareholders. We are looking at potential spinout of our PGE assets. Those that could come to bear this year. That would hopefully create a catalyst, may be able to provide a dividend back to shareholders, and so on, as we've done in the past. Deal flow, we do have interest in a number of our projects, and we're really focused on moving a couple of our significant projects that we're not working on. We'd like to find a new joint venture partner for our Galgano Gold project, for example. We think that's significant. I'm just going to spend all week on it next week, heading out to the field. We think our whole team is headed there. We think we've got a nice tiger by the tail there with the work that's been done recently. So that should also help out as a catalyst. And then the final thing is really, are we able to get Canadian Gold Miner public? That will be very helpful. as well as allow us to understand we own 23% of that company in terms of shares. Having that as a public vehicle creates lots of options for us, but also gives us a mark to market on the value of those shares that we hold. And I think SPC Nickel delivering a 43-1 National Instrument 43-101 report on the resource this year will also be significant in creating a catalyst for our stock. So all good news ahead of us. A very limited downside on this company. I think now's the time to be thinking about it and taking a good look at it and calling the CEO and learning more about it. It's a really good opportunity in my mind.
Yeah, Scott, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story and telling us about Transition Metals. Obviously got quite a lot going ahead over the next sort of 6 to 12 months, and obviously a lot of projects to get involved in, and obviously you're probably looking at more projects as well. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions, if they want to follow your story, what social media platforms are you on and how can they follow you?
Yeah, currently we're on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. We're also on the Mining IR platform as well. So all those areas you can have a look at us. We do have a website, transitionmetalscorp.com. There's contact information there. I check the corporate info email address or email bill every day. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, that's a good way to do it. But you can also give me a call. Always happy to take calls.
Yeah, great. Scott, really appreciate your time. Thank you. All the best for the remainder of the year. And I'm sure you never know, there might be another award coming up soon in 2024.
Yep, that's the idea. Very good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Nice
thank
morning.
you. And audience, appreciate your continued support. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please keep sharing these episodes amongst people within the industry, friends, colleagues, but also people outside of the industry as well, to obviously promote our brand, promote the mining industry, because there's a lot of education in these podcasts. So appreciate your continued support. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.